If you all could please rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to thank you all. It's a pretty big crowd here tonight for coming to this Board of Trustees meeting on May 9th. We have, as usual, for the month, we have the Employee of the Month. And, you know, it's great pleasure because the employee is here. And not only is he, and with his staff, and great to see. The Employee of the Month is Dean McNamara. Dean is the Southampton Village Fire Marshal. He's in the building department. His date of hire was December 4th, 2004. And I will read you what is said about Dean from his supervisor, Chris Talbot. Dean McNamara has served the village fire marshal for the past 15 years since taking over for Doug Dolliver. The fire marshal position is charged with inspecting all assemblies used on a yearly basis, as well as all other commercial spaces on a rotating basis over a 3-year span. In addition to these many inspections, Dean also reviews permits for commercial or industrial projects, which includes renovations, alterations, new work, or replacement of equipment, such as hood and duct systems or fire sprinklers, and performs inspections in relation to their construction. He also issues bonfire permits and reviews all special events requests for safety and security of participants. While Dean is busy with his duties as fire marshal, he is also a national certified fire arson inspector. Following any fire incident, we can always expect a complete and extremely thorough review of these incidents by Dean. Along with the above-mentioned roles, Dean is also a firefighter and, most importantly, a dedicated family man. For these reasons and others, I recommend Dean as Employee of the Month. And I just want to say, Dean does far more than what is written here also. He has helped us so many times when we've had special projects at the Arts Center, and he's researched the different fire requirements, and he's also goes around the village and helps the stores, and he's really truly an asset to the village of Southampton. And remember that your dad is extra special. Well, we don't have a plaque. We do have a photo, but we really don't need him because he's here. But you gotta. Now, who are these all, Dean?
Patrick.
Patrick? How are you?
Irving. McKinley.
McKinley, how are you? And Haley, how are you? Should be very proud of you, Dad. Come on in here, get close to him so we can get a picture.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Great. You might forget who you are.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I do want to add something before you walk out, Dean. Other than I didn't spell Marshall right in the agenda, but you know, Dean has a difficult job because oftentimes he needs to go to a property owner or someone who's trying to get their business open and has to kind of give some unpleasant news, but necessary and legal news to them about what they need to have done. But he does it in such a pleasant and professional manner. And, you know, in throughout my career, one of the most difficult things, and what I find people who do something for the length of time you've been doing it already, that they get an edge after a while. And what I find, just, as such a positive attribute that you have is that, every day you come in with a smile and you do your job professionally and you're pleasant and professional every day. And I just want to say thank you.
Well said, Russell.
Hospital loves you.
And we move along to our public comment section. Great to see his family here, though, isn't it? Yeah, it's terrific. Fran Ann-Mancheski.
Good evening. Fran Adamczewski, 40 West Prospect Street in Southampton. I hope I'm not too late. I'm sure you know I'm here. Surf school. Last year, it was a little bit of a mess down at Little Plains where they were. As states, 9 to 5, 9 to 12, Monday through Friday. Not weekends. They were there all day, Monday through Fridays, and on weekends. The parking lot was a mess. The beach was a mess. I don't know if you picked a school yet or a bid came in. I don't know if they did your bids. I know the bids were supposed to be done, whatever. But I don't see why the village doesn't hire somebody to work for the village and to be regulated by the village instead of having certain entities come in from somewhere else, not in the village, and have their way with the village, because it seems like nothing's ever done. Calls are made, they're here, and nothing's done. It's a mess. I'd like some peace in the village once. We need to get this under control so everybody can enjoy the beach. I understand about surf school, kids want to learn to surf, but what is the definition of surf lesson? You have to figure that out, what they do. If they're a surf camp or they're babysitting, what are they doing at our beaches, in our parking lots, all day long, Monday through Friday and Saturday and Sunday, all summer long. And I just hope the village gets it right and does maybe give somebody else a shot, or, like I said, maybe the village should run a surf school like the town gives lessons. They do the town. Maybe the village can do the same instead of having a commercial entity come in from somewhere else that just has their way with our beaches. Thank you.
Thank you, Fran. I think I know who I'm going to call to go look at the surf to see which beach.
My beach.
Merrill Barnett.
Yes. Hi, my name is Merrill Barnett. I live at 595 Little Noyak Path in Watermill. I've come down here with a dozen of my teammates to talk about pickleball, the fastest growing sport in America. We play at SYS around the kids' schedule, but it's not designated particularly for us. We understand that there was land set aside in the village by the town to set up pickleball courts, and evidently nothing is happening with that. But there's a huge following. There's a huge following from New York City out to Montauk, and there really are no great facilities on the East End to be playing. It would be an attraction for people because there are tournaments and all sorts of activities. It's a very, very social game. And I guess also it should be noted that the game was developed originally by a dad to entertain his young children. It wasn't a game that was intended for middle-aged people or people stepping down from tennis. It was intended for young people, and it just happens to be a game that the middle-aging of us are really enjoying and not finding a place to play when it's the easiest and least expensive activity to set up to be able to have and offer the activity.
Can I ask you, how many courts are set up for pickleball in town?
SYS, we can fit 5 courts on like a hockey court, which is not ideal. I mean, the courts, if we were really going to build them and attract and be able to have, Long Island's pickleball championships right here in Southampton, the courts should really be individually fenced in with permanent nets and not necessarily setting up these, the nets the way that we do. We play in Hampton Bays and Red Creek in the summertime in a similar setup. There's, 5 courts that, where the balls are all over the place, and it's not ideal, but I think we would settle for anything that came close to that because there's just no place to go play.
So those are temporary setups, is that what you're saying?
Well, they're temporary insofar as, like when the kids are using the hockey court, they play hockey on there. We set up nets that, come in bags that, we put up the net on lines that are very much.
You don't use the tennis part of the SYS at all?
No. And the lines to the court, which are very, very simple, are completely jerry-rigged on the hockey courts and the basketball court. I mean, there's just lines everywhere that it's difficult to play there. The lighting is impossible to play there. I mean, it's killing our middle-aged eyes to play there. It would really be nice to play outdoors in sunshine, and I think it would be a real hot spot.
Well, we have as you know, the Moses Lane facility, which we have started work on it. We've started first we're putting in a walking trail, which covers all the way around the side of it and then back again. That walking trail is a little better than 3/4 finished.
Right.
And we are also doing a berm along the railroad tracks to reduce the noise of trains and
I had heard that there was a location and that there was something going on there, but evidently the courts themselves are not happening.
well, we haven't built them yet. I think we've had that piece of property, for 2 years now, maybe? 3 years?
Yeah, the town didn't put it aside.
We also going to put bocce there,
it was an
too. I
agreement
think
with
we were doing
CPF.
3 courts.
Right.
Only one would be pickleball.
Right, well, that's too bad.
Yeah.
I mean,
and then,
several things we're looking to do with it. That's.
When we get 5 courts going, there's 50 people that'll come out to play on any
originally we were just
given
going to
day.
do 3 courts, and one would be designated for pickleball and 2 bocce ball courts.
I would bet that the pickleball will become much more popular than the bocce.
And it's more popular than tennis right now. A tennis court can
Bocce's
be...
pretty big. Don't bet on that.
12 acres, what is it?
11 acres. I think a little over 11 acres.
So it's big enough, I
to
think.
accommodate multiple
should.
courts.
My wife talks about it, and she played a lot of paddle tennis, which I used to play too before.
I'm my happiest when I'm playing pickleball.
But
And you guys are middle-aged too, Bill.
They say, yeah, early middle-aged.
And anything I can do to move along the process. I am
Yeah.
retired, I have time. I'll, block
Well,
off
it
the
was
lines with
certainly,
somebody.
stay in touch with us because, we've been pushing more towards the tennis, but maybe the pickleball's a
think-
better way to go.
With all due respect, I think you'd find that it's more popular than tennis these days.
And we haven't started that part of the project, so.
They're putting some in at the Meadow Club.
Oh,
Because of the demand of people that go
really?
down to Florida, apparently it's a
not all of
huge
us
deal
will
down
have
there.
Maybe they
access
can
to
go play
that.
there.
No, this is where you go.
Okay, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things I think is important is that tennis courts and pickleball courts can be interchangeable. The
Yes, they
confusion
can
is the
be.
lines.
I know,
And
so you
so
can have-
what needs to happen is, it needs to be a way for, there to be clearer definition of lines so that you can interchange them.
I'm assuming these are more like
Sets of lines.
paddleball dimensions,
Yeah.
paddleball court dimensions.
Tennis is a lot louder. I was a tennis player, too.
I haven't heard that. I've heard just the opposite. Me too.
Pickleball is
Yep.
louder? I can't imagine that.
Much
It's like a
louder.
hard
Played with a
it's like a
plastic
handball.
ball.
I know, but there's a whooshing that goes with it.
Wish
A
it
big whooshing.
Wishing for pickleball.
Is that an industry term?
Whooshing.
Dorothy Riley.
We'll talk pickle, too. She's coming up to talk
She
pickle.
has her weapon.
You okay with your weapons?
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. As most of you know, what?
State your name, please.
Dorothy Riley.
Thank you.
Dorothy Wright Riley. And I was born and raised down the street, and that lake behind your heads is where I played all the time. And there's only one tiny little thing that would make this town even sweeter, and that is pickleball courts. So we play at SYS, as Meryl mentioned, and they get their revenue from summer camps, so we're kicked out of there in the summertime. We've got no place to play unless we all go all the way to Red Creek Park or to Montauk, which some of us have regularly done, and it doesn't contribute. It does add to the driving problem. But I would say one thing. I've played all over. I've played in Hawaii, I've played in Mexico, I've played in California, I've played in Florida, I've played in Vermont. Everywhere I go, there's pickleball courts. And it's very rare that we do play on courts that are dedicated just to pickleball. The basketball players and the hockey players and the pickleball players all become friendly. It's just the tennis players that are not willing to be friendly, I swear.
No surprise there.
And some of you also may remember that I grew up with the tennis court on South Main Street. That was my sport. Recently in January, I invited a bunch of tennis players, women, to be part of Babe's Pickleball, 7 o'clock, Monday, Friday pickleball.
Can you say that?
And they came, and they became converts. So, couple of things. If you have a tennis court, you can actually fit 4 pickleball courts. That is 16 active people playing and 5 waiting. And they rotate. It's so social. It creates such a sense of community. And I know all of you are feeling the need to create community, year-round community in Southampton. I know from the Historical Museum that there's an attrition rate of year-round people, and what we really want to do is create that local community. So I'm going to throw in a little bonus. How many of us in the audience might be willing to teach these guys, raise your hand, would you be willing to help teach these guys pickleball? We'll be there for you. Keep my name on your books, and I will help however I can. Thank you very much for your
Let me
time.
ask you quick. Do you have an organized league? I mean, you say you have a head count of people. How many? Go back to the podium because they have to hear you.
I don't hear very well.
Do you have an organized league?
No,
Okay, so you say there's about
we're
50 people.
totally ad hoc,
Okay.
which is a good thing. Yeah. But if you want us to be organized, we will be organized. Whatever you need.
I tell you,
Two
Dorothy,
sides to that.
you have the town supervisor who's actually
Yeah,
a
he wants
village
it.
resident.
Yes.
I got to say, probably once a week, and Julie would testify to that, he texts me and he just puts pickleball. That's all he writes.
I saw him recently.
Another thing, now I don't know what's hearsay and what's not, but when I spoke with Jay, he said that when the property was donated, he was told, or he asked for, or it was agreed upon, there would be 4 pickleball courts. So I don't know if there's a change in
There was
that,
there
or
was a lot of
the
discussion
is-
about what to go on. That's why it's not town property. It was both purchase of CPF. It was both
Yes,
town and
CPF
village.
property.
It's in village property. We run it. But so it was mentioned earlier that town, the town didn't give us the property. It was a CPF purchased land, which is an intermunicipal agreement with the town and the village.
Okay, thanks for the
And
clarification.
he-
So,
and he
and
did
that was
not
many, as
specify
Nancy Yeah, Nancy will
Yeah,
attest. There were
We
many
went to meetings
discussions.
with him, and actually, the pickleball came up later.
Yeah.
Because we said
He
we
wanted
were putting
tennis,
in
and he wanted
3 courts.
tennis in
Well,
the
I have to
beginning.
say one thing. One pickleball court isn't really going to create what
Right.
we're hoping to create.
Well, we were
No, we have
putting
no
in 3
aversion to it.
courts, so.
How many?
We were putting in 3
tennis-
courts.
3 tennis
so you
courts. So if
can-
you're saying you can get so much more out of,
At a single
one
tennis court, if you go online and look up pickleball overlays on a tennis court, you'll see outlines for 4 courts.
Right.
Did I say 3? I meant 4. The other thing is some of the places I've played, in Ann Arbor, Michigan, really high-class place, they are putting in as many courts as they possibly can into one gymnasium. Literally, I took a tape measure. The courts are 3 feet apart, which anybody would tell you you need 6 feet. But you can do anything, and people will enjoy it and forgive the little
we have
nuances. I
space
played
to
it-
do more.
What's that?
We have a lot of space to do a lot more there.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we picked, there's a huge center area, and then there's the walkway going all the way around.
Oh.
And then closest to where the parking was, we were going to line up the courts and the bocce. But there's all of this here still. So we can do whatever we want, really. It's just a matter of funding.
Yeah.
So that's what we're working on at the moment.
Great.
And if you would like to take a look, that we do have
It's a
a
mess over there, though, now.
rendering.
Yeah, we
of-
do have that.
Oh, I'd like to see that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll come by
It's on the
next
website.
week sometime.
Yep.
Check
Is
that
that
out.
on the website?
Okay.
I don't think it is on the
I don't
website.
think it is, but if I can add it. I will add it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next we have, and if I get your last name wrong, so I just can't really see it, Susan Grow.
Yeah, I'm also here, Susan Grun, for the, support the paddle. I won't.
Without the weapon? You don't have the weapon?
You
You don't have the
your
weapon?
with you.
Pardon me?
You don't have the weapon.
No, I don't.
It's on her chair.
But I'm a pickle convert. You mentioned paddle, platform tennis, Bill. The court's the same size as
Yeah,
platform
no, I
tennis.
realize that.
Yeah, so it is considerably smaller than tennis, and
It's the rage,
yeah, it is.
and we should do it. Big.
And next we have Dan Galizio.
Mayor, trustees, my name is Dan Galizio. I'm part of the consulting team that's working on the Gin Lane restoration plan. Dr. Gobler gave a very detailed presentation on it a couple meetings ago, and we recognize that there's a lot of work yet to be done in conjunction with the plan in terms of the details on how such an arrangement would work. But I'm here tonight to implore you to consider adopting a resolution to move forward with the plan as subject to the execution of an agreement to your satisfaction over the next few weeks. What we'd like to do, and we're even willing to put a time frame on it in terms of how long it would take to actually execute the agreement, but we've been working on the plan for a couple of years. We are incredibly grateful the amount of support and consideration that the trustees have provided in sitting down and working with us on the plan, listening to the details, hearing about the merits of the action. And again, not to belabor the point in terms of Dr. Goldberg's presentation, but I think we all recognize that we have significant environmental and public health issues associated with the lake. We know that there's a multifaceted approach that needs to be done to address these concerns, declining water quality, and this is maybe one of many actions that need to be taken. But we're very eager to move forward with that in partnership with you to provide private sector funding in order to augment the village's efforts to address water quality. And again, we understand we have a lot of wood to chop, so to speak, in terms of working out such an agreement with you. But again, we've been at it for a few years. We've expended a considerable amount of money and time to get to this point. And before we go too much further, we'd love to hear from the village, from the trustees, that you're in support of the plan, provided we can work out an agreement that meets all of your concerns. And we're willing to bring whatever resources are needed to address those concerns. We understand that there's licensing issues and access issues and timing and maintenance and construction costs. We are 100% dedicated to addressing those concerns to your satisfaction. It would just greatly help our efforts as kind of a sign of goodwill that we know you're in support of the plan. And so tonight I'm respectfully asking if it was possible for you to consider adopting or approving the plan, again, subject to the execution of agreement to your complete satisfaction. Even if you wanted to put a time frame on those discussions to the next meeting, May 21st, I believe it is, we're more than happy to work within those time frames. And if we can get something done, great. And if it turns out we can't get something done, then that's fine too, and there's no harm done to the village or its residents. But we consider this to be a real opportunity to move forward to address a significant need within the village with a reduced cost to the taxpayer and a unique kind of public-private partnership that we think is an approach that can be built upon for other efforts within the lake as well. If you have any questions about that, I'm more than happy to address them. But again, I had a brief conversation with the village attorney earlier, and I just want to, again, stress, we understand that there are a number of issues that you'll want to address through the agreement. We're committed to doing that. We want to address every single concern that you have, but we'd like to, again, just understand and at this point whether or not you're in support of this approach and the idea of removing the invasive species that exist, the Phragmites and Japanese knotweed, and replacing those with native plant species to, again, reduce and mitigate the impacts from stormwater runoff and to absorb more pollutants in the lake from entering the lake. And again, to do that in a way that's environmentally sensitive without the use of herbicides or pesticides in any way.
Well, thank you, Dan. We do have a discussion later on in the meeting on that project. And really the biggest difficulty of it, is both you and I know, is the details. And we just want to make sure that we got it right.
We understand that completely. We want to work those details out with you. We'd just like to, again, hear from the trustees that this makes sense as an approach to combating water quality. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Yes, Rob.
Good evening. Rob Coburn, 345 Hill Street. I am a member of the Village ARB, but I'm here as a taxpayer and citizen to talk about the same issue, actually, on Agawam, because I haven't followed all the details, but I'm aware of the discussions about the planting around Lake Agawam. And I just wanted to ask that as you continue those discussions, that we all keep in mind that within the last couple of years, there's been a lot of discussion about that view shed in particular, related to an application that happened to come before the ARB. We had dozens of residents in the village who spoke or wrote to the ARB at that time to preserve that view shed. And I think almost a couple thousand people who signed a petition, largely based on preservation of that view shed. That, in that case, it was specific to one home that was being considered, but obviously anything that might impede that view shed above a certain height and reduce visibility of the lake would be naturally of concern to those same people, because it would not only affect the view of that house, but many others. And I also just throw out and ask the question, I don't need an answer, but since Agawam and that whole property is within the historic district, it's my understanding from the village code that any change of landscaping to a property in the historic district would come before the ARB for review. I don't know if that's been considered as part of this process, or if that's a question, Wayne, that you would weigh in on. But
I'll be advising the board, but essentially you do realize this is a village project. So this is on village property, and it is a village project, and it'll be
right. But other village projects like the
subject
ambulance barn and other things come before the board for review, subject to the same. If the village isn't exempted as a
some of those
property owner.
cases, they are exempt from review, but the board has voluntarily asked for comments from the various boards. So they certainly can do that in this case as well.
In concept, I'm a big supporter of the previous speaker's idea of a public-private partnership. I think that's great. and all the goals of this in terms of helping to clean the lake sound great. I remember when there were no Phragmites, and you drove by and saw some rose bushes and some mallows, and they were in little clumps, and they were 4 feet tall, and you could see the lake. So it's too bad we don't have that, and we're fighting the Phragmites. But I just wanted to, I guess, to be specific, ask that any planting plan that's considered preserve a view sort of above sort of 3 to 5 feet, which is what the native plantings were before, that any view above that from the road can be seen so that that view shed across the lake is preserved.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other? Yes.
How do you do? My name is Adele Christensen, and I live in Watermill. I am a private business person. My practice is in the town village of Southampton, and I am a volunteer EMT driver with the Southampton Town Ambulance. And I'm a pickleballer. And I am going to age with this sport to live to be 114. And I love it, and I am here to encourage you like Field of Dreams. Build it and they will come. Please educate yourselves before you make this decision. To answer the question of this gentleman earlier, there are pickleball leagues and there is a National Association of Ambassadors. These are people who are dedicated to promoting the sport and training people. I am one of the people who started the play at SYS. 3 years ago, there were about 3 of us who said, we went over to Molly Lambert and said, can we play pickleball? Well, sure. So they let us tape the courts onto the ring, and pretty soon they noticed people were showing up paying their $5 to go play. And within a couple of years, we had 3 courts filled. And when Scott went to paint the courts, I said, paint as many as you can, for heaven's sakes. We now have 5. And you go there any given day, there's 40 people playing. You go to Red Creek, and there's many, many tennis courts with maybe 2 people on 6 courts. And you look over at the ring, and there's 40 people waiting to play pickleball. Why do aging people like it? It's the size of a badminton court. It's an underhanded serve. It's easier on your rotator cuff. It's easier on your knees. So you're not killing yourself with this game. It's an easy game to age with. It is taught in the Southampton High School. So it is already in the culture of our education and the lexicon of sport, so to speak. There is no championship play anywhere on Long Island. Now, if any of you have ever gone to Naples, where they hold the U.S. Open for pickleball, you will see 60 to 70 courts, and they are building more. And they have these courts designated by play level. So there might be 10 for the 1-0s and 10 for the 1.5 and the 2-0 and the 2.5, all the way up to 5.5 level play. It could become an economic opportunity to have championship play here. And I guarantee you that if you build it, they will come. I learned this at SYS. They were thinking small. They didn't think big. And you start to research it, and you'll see it's the fastest growing sport in the continent. And it's true, the aging boomers are aging into this sport, but the younger people are being taught too. It's a sport that is an evergreen sport. As long as the weather's fine, people will be using those outdoor courts. And it is a great community builder. And it's a great way to have influx of traffic coming into your park facility. It's a fabulous use of the land. I personally, as would Dar, we will be happy to educate you. We will be happy to take you out and show you how to play. I play with Jay, and we're working on his short game. He doesn't rush the net, but he's got promise. He actually smacked me in the face the other day, but I didn't take it personally. That was with the ball.
I think I'm going to have nightmares about Jay and pickleball.
It's a fun game, and the thing about it is, I gotta say, it's not as elitist as tennis. People come from all avenues of life, and you find yourself cheek by jowl with people you just wouldn't imagine yourself. It's kind of like running an ambulance call. You never know who you're gonna get. And it's a very friendly game. It's an 11-point game, so there's a quick turnover. So the time that you have for play, if you amortize that over the amount of fun and the number of people who get to share in that, it is a very good bang for your buck. And I would be happy to also look at the renderings. And we know people who play pickleball who lay foundations and who have learned how to set up courts. You know, if it's a question of funding, we're creative. We could find ways to accomplish the growth of this sport, but it's also by the train track. You know, I saw at the Shinnecock, the Open, where people were coming out and going to the golf from there. I mean, if you had a world-class facility here, you would drive traffic. You know, right now we're driving an hour and a half up island to get 5-0 play, to get really good play. And there's no reason we couldn't grow it here, and there's no reason we couldn't attract a lot of commerce with it.
3 minutes.
So I thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Can I just ask you one question? I mean, this is common. I'm really supposed to. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there seems to be a presumption that we were never considering pickleball. Trustee McGann, that was the first thing she mentioned when we got the land. So pickleball was always a consideration. I will say the volume of courts, though, I'm already looking ahead because there are people in the neighborhood. It is around a residential area. And I would be careful with saying that you want 60 courts, because that'll probably scare the hell out of them, and then they'll show up to say, don't do it. So,
I'm sure there's a way to meet in the middle.
well, there's a way, there always is, but I'm just,
If anything, I'm here to raise the bar of your sight line. That's what I'm here to do.
We're good with the property, but again, we've always, pickleball was actually, again, Trustee McGann was the one, actually, Schneiderman was the one that said he wanted tennis. So originally, so Nancy McGann was the one who said pickleball. So everything you said tonight was actually, she said this last year about this being the middle-aged sport.
And you can multi-purpose this with other sports. You know, on one basketball court, you can fit 3 pickleball courts.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I haven't done the measurements the way Dar has, but, you know, if you're concerned about multi-purposing, it is definitely a possibility. But I'm just thinking in terms of volume of recreational bodies, okay? It's at the pickleball court. That's where people are showing up.
Does pickleball have to have a north-south exposure as well?
Ideally, yes. And I've gone to Florida where, you know, it's like, oh my God, what's wrong? And they didn't do the north-south exposure, which is similar with tennis. Tennis courts, you can't dual purpose unless it's a hard court. Like, I couldn't play pickleball on a hard true, right, on a slidey surface, nor could I play.
Surface, all weather. We were thinking about doing all weather.
Yeah, all weather, exactly. You could play that. And the point is, if the lines are designated with good color differentiation, you can have tennis courts and pickleball courts. You know, one's a bright orange, one's a white, you know, something like that, so that. But I suggest, like, go to Red Creek. You know, look at the tennis courts, look at the pickleball courts, and that kind of makes the argument right there.
Right.
I'd say something too, Michael. You know, one thing you I think would be smart to do, because I think we're probably in for a big surprise as to how popular this is. And that if you're planning to build 3 courts now and some bocce courts, put the bocce courts far enough away that if it should have been 6 courts, 9 courts, 12 courts, whatever the heck it should have been, you didn't paint yourself into a corner where...
Oh, definitely. We can rearrange that. We have a lot of space there.
Yeah, because we've got a lot of room.
Canvas is
I went and drove by it today. Like, you do have a lot of room, and it would be a fabulous opportunity.
But we don't want the train stopping there.
What's that?
We don't want the train stopping, letting people out from Manhattan.
Okay, thank you.
Can we get the skateboard park
Thank
there?
you.
Skateboard park next to the pickleball park.
We're not doing this.
Any other comments
We'll get the younger
for
the...
We're
Fran?
not doing a skateboard park.
You like pickleball too, Frank?
I love pickleball. Thing is, I take up the whole court. Sorry.
You ever get pickled?
Pickleball champion.
You can walk to it.
Right back to the point of surf school, we need more signs at the beach to say, at every beach, to say maybe the hours of school and lessons to inform other people, because some people don't realize that they're actually not allowed to hire somebody for a surf lesson after those hours or on those days. So maybe we put signs on all the village beaches to inform everybody that surf school is in a designated area at that, if you're going to have a surf school. Hopefully not, but if you
If we
do.
have a surf school, it will be in a designated area. It will be the beach will designate it.
Right,
they
maybe
can
you can
use.
put up a nice sign that says the hours and then the rules and regulations, because it's definitely out of hand. It's the enjoyment of the beaches aren't no longer enjoyable.
One of the things that I've heard is that there is private commerce going on our beaches, and I think that...
We've heard that too.
So we do need...
That's every year that we go through
Right.
this, that's what we hear.
That's what
And I
I'm
think
saying.
part of why the village wanted to do this was because we felt we felt children were being trained how to be in the ocean. Maybe their parents aren't around and can't do it, I don't know.
I understand that. That's why I said, why
But
doesn't
it was
the
a good
village
idea.
open up their own, do the village that way? It's regulated by the village, because right now, it's not regulated by the village. They do whatever they want to do, whenever they want to do it, and they don't care, because they're getting paid cash.
That has been discussed, actually, in the past.
Yeah, it has.
It just hasn't gotten any more traction, but I remember
I mean,
saying, like, if we're
I've
paying
been
somebody,
here
why
like
don't
a
we just do it
broken
ourselves?
record, going over the same thing.
Town does it.
I mean, I've been threatened by them and all that, so, I mean, and it's
Didn't back
it
down.
is on
Bring
record.
a paddle with you next time.
I don't need a paddle. I got my own paddle.
Got a surfboard. He's got a
I
surfboard.
mean, I think if there are, I think if it's
done in the right way.
I think if there are supposed to be specific hours, and they are going way past that, that's very wrong.
Yeah.
And that we should send our people down there and tell them off the beach.
Well, the
Now-
thing is, I called because when Mr. Epley was our mayor, he said to me, Fran, if you see him there, call and we'll have somebody come down. They would come down and then they would say, and then go on their merry way, and I'd be like going, well, nothing got accomplished, and there they are still. Getting
Yeah.
paid in the parking lot. I mean, it's commercial business. I mean, that's why I really would like the village to run
I have
this.
to say to you that when my son was growing up, and I know you know him, but when he was growing up, there was a local teacher who taught swimming and how to maneuver in the ocean and how to do some body surfing in the ocean at one of our local beaches. He got paid to do that. But you know what? I was so grateful that we had someone who was a professional showing them how to maneuver in rough water.
Well, professional. You just hit the nail on the head,
Well, he
because
was a teacher, but
you look
you-
at these guys that have been given these surf lessons, and they are not professionals. There's guys that don't even know how to surf that are giving surf lessons, because it's all about the money.
Well, they should be certified.
they're supposed to be.
They're supposed to be certified.
Well, the
so
thing
if
is,
they
I
are
think
certified, how could they
it
not know how to
states that one lifeguard for every 5
Yeah, there's a ratio, I can't remember.
or something like that.
Yeah.
But then again, you guys, after 12 o'clock, you guys they're like, all right, surf school's over, private lessons, here we go. $200 an hour.
5 o'clock in the evening?
No, well, 12 o'clock on. Or all day, I should say. Some guys are down there that aren't even certified lifeguards that are giving private lessons that are out with 2 or 3 people. And,
We need to check that
I mean,
Those are the ones that are difficult to control, to be honest.
that's what I'm saying. Maybe it's just better off if the village could control it themselves. And it's like the town, like I said, the town does it. They have their own surf schools. And they're regulated, and it doesn't seem like a
And
big
so
problem.
what
in
you're
town.
saying to me is that when the town has its own surf school and they close up at 12 noon or 1 o'clock, there isn't somebody giving private lessons there as well?
I'm not sure.
I know, well, that's
I'm
my
not sure.
question.
I don't know what their rules are in the town. I
Right.
do not know. But I know no commercial businesses in the village on the beach anywhere.
It's an issue.
So I can't go down the beach and sell beads or something like that, or, you know, I mean,
Or paddles.
or paddles, or pickleball paddles, and set up a pickleball court on the beach. How about that? How about a pickleball? Can you play pickleball on the beach? No. All right. Just a suggestion.
Paddleball or Kadima.
Paddleball, Kadima? I hate that shit. But anyway,
Thanks.
signs maybe. I don't know what you're gonna do. I don't know what the bid came up to this year. I don't know what it was last year. How much money does the village make
We got
off of?
2 bids.
How much does the village actually make off a surf school?
Not much.
So is it really worth the hassle for our residents and people that
The intent
use
of the
the
surf
beach?
school is to try to mitigate the problems that we're talking about, because in the years past, we've had no surf schools, and the guys end up being spread all over the beaches, and there's all sorts of people that are,
They're
they're
all over
doing
the
the-
place now too, so
Yeah.
it's not really.
it is, but it's a little more contained. It's not perfect.
No, it's definitely not perfect.
So I live near that area, and I've seen a heightened activity level there, especially in the last few years, and we have received a couple of complaints, because it's not just the surf activity, it's all of the cars, and
Well, that's the thing, they park there all day
they
long.
park there all day.
And you can tell, it's, you know,
Right.
there's 15 boards in the truck, and the guys just back up to the beach and just dump all the boards right there. And when you want to go onto the beach, you have to, like, walk around a pile of crap, you know, just to get to the beach, and they don't care.
But as it continues to grow, there's also a message that it sends, which is, what other commercial practices can we do on our beaches? And, you know, what's the enforcement of our current?
Exactly, enforcement. That's what we need,
Well,
is
I don't
enforcement.
think that message, what you're saying, what other commercial ventures can we do on our beach? I don't agree with that. I mean, I understand you're thinking that, but we have not seen that.
So
We've
we've
not
had
seen that.
Well, there
Because
was-
the surf school's been around for quite a number
Yeah,
of
it
years.
has been.
And we haven't had other people come up to us and say, oh, well, the surf school is running a business. I'd like to run this business down there. Nobody has ever asked for that.
So
The
we have-
purpose was to teach children how to maneuver in the ocean.
Well, we should move ahead
I know we
here
have to.
because
Yeah, we're in public comment, are we? Let's kind of get this back to 3
Sorry.
minutes.
You know how I am. Well,
Thank you.
I always go over my 3 minutes, but
Well, we're just guilty too, so let's.
is that Wayne?
Twice.
Twice. All right, sorry. Sorry. All right, I'm
Thank
done.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fran.
Gotta eat dinner.
All right, go.
Okay.
Any other public
Wish we
comment?
could.
You're right.
No further public comments. We move ahead to board presentations, and tonight we have a very interesting presentation, which is the Southampton Hospital Adaptive Reuse Plan. And Southampton Hospital, as most of you know, has plans to move up to the college facility, and as as Mr. Travis here knows, I've been concerned for a number of years because the hospital has such a big impact on the village of Southampton, from a financial impact to just an activity impact and employee impact. They're one of the largest employers. And so I introduced Paul Travis, who's the Southampton Planning Commission, and
Mayor and trustees, thank you for the opportunity to talk about the hospital area comprehensive reuse plan. I think last summer you asked us to think about the potential plans of the hospital to move and how we would modify the comprehensive plan to reflect that. It's hard to overstate the role of the hospital in the village. Hospital was founded in 1909 on its current site. Samuel Parrish, who of course did so much for the village, actually donated the original 2.5 acres that the hospital used. The hospital has grown a lot since then, obviously. It now employs 600 people. It is the largest employer on the East End, far and away the largest employer in the village. The hospital and the area around it that's occupied by medical activities is now 20 acres. So it's a very significant factor in the village. Having said that, I think everyone recognizes that it's a very aged facility and really doesn't reflect the modern needs of the medical profession. In 2017, the Southampton Hospital merged with the Stony Brook Hospital to create Stony Brook Southampton Hospital, and then began a 2-year process which culminated actually this last December with the governor signing a bill that officially merged the two hospitals and gave the Stony Brook Southampton Hospital a lease of a site on the Stony Brook Southampton campus. It is the job of the Southampton Association to raise the money to build a new hospital, which is now underway. They have hired consultants to work with them to make that happen. And I think it's a fair chance that at some point, maybe 5 or 6 years down the road, the hospital will leave and occupy a new hospital, which is probably a very good thing for healthcare on the East End, but obviously raises both opportunities and challenges for the village. It's an opportunity to think about land use for a very large site, but it's also, and I think a lot of our conversation in the last 6 months, also is a challenge of what the impact will be on the village, and particularly the village center when those 600 employees move several miles. And what the possibilities are for the site. So we began a process last August. This has been at public hearings of the Planning Commission, I think 5 times. We, with your guidance, formed a committee to do the work of sending out a request for qualifications, which went out last September, and then had a meeting, and I should say, and I've been very happy to say, the hospital has been participating in those meetings, which has been extraordinarily helpful. We got some submissions on that RFQ in November. We had a workshop meeting on December 8th, I think it was, to look at all those, a follow-up on January 25th. And at the last meeting of the Planning Commission in March, we adopted a recommendation to send on to you. So I'm going to let Eldon Scott from the Planning Commission talk about the process we went through, and then James Lima and his team are here to make a presentation to you.
Thank you. I'm Eldon Scott. I'm on the Planning Commission. And we set up a subcommittee to look at the RFQ. And I think the easiest thing to do is to read to you the letter that we submitted on March 7th to the trustees. It says, Dear Mayor and Trustees, At your request, the Planning Commission organized a subcommittee to propose zoning and design guidelines for the Southampton Hospital and adjacent sites. The hospital has announced its intention to move the facility to Stony Brook Southampton campus. A subcommittee was formed, which includes members of the commission, hospital representatives, members of other village boards, and neighboring residents. In September, the subcommittee drafted a scope of work for a consulting team to advise the village. The village issued requests for qualifications in October. I think we had about 6 proposals that came in. Responses were reviewed, and on December 8th, we first met, the subcommittee met to go over the proposals. Let's see, where am I? Subcommittee heard presentations from, we set up a workshop session to hear from 3 of the finalists, and it was AECOM, James Lima Planning in connection with FX Collaborative, and BHC Architects. And all 3 teams gave excellent and thoughtful presentations. After these presentations, the subcommittee met and we ranked the teams according to the following criteria: strength of the lead firm, strength of the principal in charge, strength of the project manager, urban design qualifications, zoning, community engagement, economic analysis, historic preservation, environmental, and traffic and transportation. After the ranking process, the James Lima and FX Fowle was ranked highest by the subcommittee by a pretty good number. So on March 7th, the Planning Commission at its public meeting voted to recommend that the village retain James Lima Planning and FX Collaborative. So that was a letter we submitted. Subsequent to that, the trustees asked that they actually meet the consultants, the proposed consultants, to hear from them directly. So without further ado, I will pass it along.
Thanks very much. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, trustees. I'm still on a high from the McNamara family. I mean, I was hoping that the kids were going to be here to help me out. That's really counting on that. It's a pleasure to be here. We're humbled to be considered for this project. It's a very significant moment in the history of the village, and we take the responsibility seriously. First, want to introduce my colleagues. Marwa Fawaz from VHB. They're Long Island-based engineers and environmental consultants, be handling all of our infrastructure, transportation, and SECRA analysis. And Mark Strauss, who's been a collaborator of mine for many, many years, who's a principal of FX Collaborative, architecture and urban design firm active throughout the region, the country, internationally. So I think that Paul did a great job framing the discussion, so I'll move really quickly through the presentation that we were proposing to make to you, just in the interest of time. And if there are questions afterward, we'll come back to specific projects. Just this aerial photo says a lot about what an extraordinary location we're talking about. It is of international significance as a destination in the world. It's also a critical moment to think about both managing significant change and preserving village character, and to tease out from you, like, what are your core values as a community, not just this elected body, but the larger community, and how community engagement will allow all the voices to come together to say, like, who are we and who do we want to be, and how do all the things that get decided about what's permitted to happen in the future at this particular site reflect our values and our principles as a community. So we know some of the issues are very much about addressing the concerns of losing a major economic driver in a relatively small village, and all the ways that existing anchor has supported many small businesses over decades, and the impacts on the economy. And so what are some of the opportunities, given the assets you have, given the resources, given that location, given the existing buildings, giving its potential for adaptive reuse and new buildings, to maintain a job-generating economy, at least on part of that site, so it remains a productive part of your your village economy. There are very distinct and diverse stakeholder groups that need to be convened, sometimes in big venues, sometimes in small. We have decades of expertise in working with you to identify the most effective ways to make sure that we're reaching people where they live. And then you've got the quality of life and residential character issues that have, for decades, butted up against a fairly intensive non-residential use. Our team has deep expertise in historic preservation, adaptive reuse, and sensitive issues about new uses in significant communities. And we know that there are concerns that are only continuing to become more pronounced about kind of local versus visitor experiences and economic opportunities in the village. And then there are questions on the technical side of legacy, environmental, and other infrastructure challenges presented at the site. All of those require the expertise of the team that we've put together. So the foundation of all of this is stakeholder engagement. This is integral to the work that all of our firms are doing, and it's establishing and maintaining broadly representative and effective stakeholder consultation. And then the next phase will be about reuse scenarios and planning and feasibility. So we'll investigate possibilities. We'll bring market ideas to test different reuse scenarios, produce comparative analyses so that you can look at the different choices, time, money, and other implications of different scales of reuse, of different program ideas, of different configurations. And then determine conceptual frameworks that then feed into the thing that you will be asked to do, which is to update your regulatory documents so that you're creating that framework within which the next user of that site can function, but that all of that happens only within the vision plan that comes out of the public consultation. So our team will be led by my firm, James Lima Planning and Development. We're real estate, economic, public policy advisors. We are actively engaged in mixed-use development throughout the country with a particular expertise in the New York region. FX File, again, will be doing urban design and leading planning. And VHB will handle much of the technical expertise on the updates to your regulatory documents, look at infrastructure, environmental, and transportation. So this iterative process creates an integrated solution for your comp plan update, as well as inform some of the other changes, both in land use and zoning, that are going to be needed. Just quickly, so we've done adaptive reuse projects for former state-owned psychiatric hospital facilities, and really looking at the value proposition of preserving and repurposing some facilities as opposed to new ground-up development. This is a case in Wassaic, in the Hudson Valley. With FX Collaborative and VHB, our three firms all worked recently with the mayor of Westbury on the state-sponsored downtown revitalization initiative, where we looked first through community engagement at a vision plan for how to expand the downtown and rethink the use of some substantial parking areas around the train station, but then translate that into specific code, which VHB is now working on directly with the village. We looked at the options of preserving some of the more historic buildings at the Creedmoor Psychiatric Center in Nassau County in Queens as well, that are more expensive than demolishing and building new, but we thought were important to understand the implications of preservation versus ground-up development. That would be the case here as well. I was the president of Governor's Island under Mayor Bloomberg, and that is a national landmark district. So 2 million square feet in national landmark buildings all needed to be kind of assessed for their potential for their next life, from military base to a new public park that was a important center of culture and education and recreation. FX File has done a significant amount of work on behalf of Governor's Island as well. And here, these are some projects that FX has worked on. Repurposing of the St. Vincent's Hospital as a new multifamily residential property in the West Village. In Garden City, reusing a former hospital for a new office building. National Landmark Armory project that became ABC headquarters building, and then on the waterfront in Brooklyn, again, adaptively reusing former warehouse buildings. So a lot of expertise in rethinking new lives for old buildings. VHB has done a downtown plan which has a lot of the pieces that would be necessary here. A downtown plan that then had a generic environmental impact statement and all the technical work in between to think about zoning code, adaptive reuse, but also different zoning districts that relate to existing neighborhood context. And then again, all of our firms have been deeply involved in all sorts of community engagement, large meetings. The New York City's first ever citywide cultural plan involved 480 meetings over a 9-month period. I don't recommend it. But we've done many more sort of bespoke engagement processes for villages of Ardsley and in Nyack, New York. We're working with the Brooklyn Public Library on a number of projects, whether it's special teen initiatives or working with seniors or any number of one-on-one and small focus groups. But we will discuss in some detail some of the ideas we have today. We always want to develop an engagement plan working very closely with the key stakeholders. So it's about building a fact base of neighborhood context, of market data, of existing buildings and infrastructure, but really also getting to know the community and hearing from the community what some of the key issues are about this three-dimensional relationship that these sets of blocks have with their surrounding context. Again, we would look at a broadly representative engagement, establishing clear and direct communications through our public engagement, public meetings, but also we think events like Saturday lunchtime workshops where the maximum number of people might be available to participate, and people from all ages and different parts of the community. One-on-one consultations as appropriate, and then establishing a clear feedback loop so that we're not just having get-togethers, but we're actually engaging in a dialogue over time. And then the technical work that both FX Collaborative and VHB will do is to look at zoning and design guidelines and test a whole bunch of scenarios. This shows work that we've done recently in Westbury, but also their work on 12 different sites for the Health and Hospitals Corporation in New York, looking at transfer of air rights and the whole set of scenarios available for real estate and institutional needs. And then the important part will be synthesizing this, where we match up what I've described earlier as your guiding principles, aligning your established values and goals and with the opportunities to advance design excellence and sustainable planning and development and maximizing public amenities and public benefit with what's possible from a market point of view and developing a range of scenarios that say, here's a range of intensity of uses from very low intensity use to high intensity use, and there are all the permutations in between, merely for disclosure purposes, to say, here are the range of options for you to consider as a comparative analysis, to give you the information you need to say, if we choose X, Y, and Z, it has time, money, and other implications, policy implications. And again, that feedback loop of testing it back with what the community has said and what you've described. So we think this comparative analysis about policy and community character, traffic, environmental, and time and money, those are all important vectors that we would investigate and, again, present back to you as a community to say, all right, you've given us the information we need to make our decisions. We're not deciding for you, we'll make recommendations for you. And then the last piece of it would be led predominantly by VHB to translate these components of the plan into adaptive reuse options and a specific secret review, and then the necessary additional document updates in your regulatory framework. So this is an illustrative schedule which has us starting, say, in mid-June. We think it's about a 6-month process, which, if it were to move on that time frame, would plant us nicely within kind of an active summer season for maximum public engagement in that conversation about the future of the site. So with that, I'll just kind of wrap up by saying I think we're a team that has extensive community and stakeholder engagement expertise. We've worked at the intersection of government and private sector, so we understand that you as government are looking through the community and political lenses, but also that there are private market forces. The Stony Brook owner needs to sort of achieve a certain value for its property. And then, we understand the technical land use and real estate components of it, and opportunities for institutional and medical related uses. So what are ways that some of the buildings on the site might be reimagined as productive healthcare related facilities? And then how do we help you translate that to a SECRA ready process that can get this to a place where it's ready for its next life? And then lastly, I've spent more than 30 years on the East End. I owned a home in East Hampton for 25 of that, and been an avid sailor in the community. And the village of Southampton has been a really important part of that experience for me. So I have a deep connection, and for better or worse, have spent more time in Southampton Hospital with friends and family than I care to remember. But it's obviously a critically important resource, and the future of the site is, again, kind of I would say, historic significance. So thank you for the time.
I have one quick question. Most of the reuses that you've done have been a single facility. One of the difficulties I see with Southampton Hospital is that they own a lot of the surrounding smaller residential houses, and then they're across the street with what used to be a nursing home and now is a medical center, and an open lot. So there's a lot of entities that I think makes it difficult to take a look at it and say, well, this is what we need to do. But, I mean, am I right or wrong? Or
Well, I think you're right that it is more complicated than a single user. Most of our work is district scale planning. So we are thinking about a multiplicity of owners. We just issued a report for the Hauppauge Industrial Park, which is the largest industrial park outside of Silicon Valley. And it's an economic opportunities report that says a place that has more than 36 scattered owners is actually the largest job center for Long Island. And what is its future relative to its logistics and its other assets? So we are used to dealing with that. And I think both in terms of the engagement, but also on the market side, we have a way to have something that's very tailored to those specific opportunities. And I think we would work closely with you to make sure that all the key owners, property owners and businesses that are at stake, that have a stake in this, would be consulted, and we would hear them.
James, can I just add something to that? Mark Strauss with FX Collaborative. I just want to say that we've also had similar experiences with large-scale sites, and I actually led a reuse strategy for the state for Pilgrim State Hospital on Long Island as well. And I think the important thing is not to be thinking about one use, that we would be looking at all of the acreage that the hospital is involved with. And as we develop a strategy, there may be multiple uses considered in various areas of the site. And we would be defining sectors and thinking about what's the most appropriate use and scale for different areas, reflective of the neighborhood characteristics around those areas. So that will be very much taken into consideration as we move forward.
Thank you.
I know the Planning Commission spent countless hours interviewing lots of different consultants, and they chose you. And one of the reasons they chose you is because you're very good at teasing out what the community believes as core values, you had said earlier. Could you just comment for the individuals who are in the room and who will be listening to this at a later date on camera as to how you go about and pull together people from the community, neighbors, even people in our broader community to help reach those core values?
Well, very often the political leadership of the community establishes a working group or a task force So we'd be open to discussing that with you if that makes sense to you. But even if you opt to not do something formal that way, we would at least try to identify who some of the key stakeholders are and to make sure that there's a process for a continuous feedback loop. We believe that we need to spend a significant amount of time talking to the people who are most directly affected in the surrounding neighborhoods. But also, it affects small businesses. There's a whole ecosystem here that will be significantly impacted. So I think it's important to look at the whole set of systems that are disrupted by something of this scale.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very much.
Any other questions from any of the trustees?
If I could just ask a question for Paul, because I apologize that I wasn't around when I know you were vetting just the 3 contenders, if
Right,
you will.
there were 6 we short.
Okay.
There were 6 originally, we then short listed to 3. The 3 we interview, and then all graded the 3 and came down to the team that.
And you did touch on it, and Kimberly just again, but for what set them above the other 2, at least, anyways.
I think as Eldon said, we really had a grid, and maybe Eldon can join in on this.
Actually, yeah, if you could elaborate on that, I guess that was, I guess that's, I can see you had a process to it, so if you could just explain what that grid was,
do you want to go through
if you don't mind.
Yeah.
You don't have to get too fancy about it, but just.
What we did was we identified, I think, 6 or 7 categories. But I mentioned before, but it was leadership and experience of the team, and then some functional areas like experience in urban design, zoning and code, community engagement, which we've talked about already, historic preservation, because there are some historic properties or potentially historic properties there. Economic analysis, which is very important because of the number of jobs that are involved. And then more technical things, which would be kind of later, which would be environmental and secret issues and traffic and transportation. And then you can take a look at this, we can share this with you. So we basically scored, and we asked all the members of the commission to score 1 to 5 on each of these categories across the different teams. And then we came up with a scoring mechanism. So that's basically how we did it. And I would say in all the categories, AECOM is it's a large firm, and they're all the firms are very professional. I think one of the things that stood out was just some of the personal connections with the area and some of the ability, I think, to look at this in a nuanced fashion and to really talk to all the different constituencies that are out here.
I think we've tried very hard at the Planning Commission not to start with any preconceived ideas.
No, you've been very.
And I think one of the things we
we
liked about this team is they didn't come to us and say these are the answers, but really talk much more about a process to get to the answers. And that's been a lot of what we try to do. I think the second point is, which is always the issue of trying to translate those ideas into actual zoning. And design guidelines, obviously working with the village attorney, and that is something they have a good deal of expertise in.
So when the hospital came and met with you on this, what was their response to you wanting to?
So I guess, we reached out. I know some of the executives of the hospital talked to the mayor last summer, and then we actually, Eldon, Scott, and I met with the hospital management in August, I think it was. And what we said is, look, we understand, obviously, this is a private piece of property. There is private property around it, but whatever you do is going to have a lot of impact on the village on one side. On the other side, when you get to the point that you want to sell or lease or whatever you're going to do, one of the things that's really going to impact the buyer is this the start of a long, arduous process that may or may not end up with approvals. One of the things this can do is allow that to happen. So when you go to the market, buyers know what they can do, and we think that could help. So I got to say, the hospital, to its credit, has been a very active participant. And, I think as they always say, and to quote Robert Ross, they've been in this village for 110 years. They do have a real feeling that whatever happens with that site really should be something that everyone is happy with. And I also should mention, one of the things I think they are thinking about is whether any of the things they do should remain on the site. And so that's another thing I think we'll be looking at is, they're going to obviously create a new hospital, but I would say, because I also know a lot about this world, for better or worse, the actual hospital bed portion of the medical world is now a very small fraction of that world. It's completely different than it was, 20 years ago. And so many of the other activities, like the cancer center that they just opened, really are a much bigger role now. And so perhaps some of that may end up on the site. Mm-hmm. So they were pretty open, but they've also been very clear with us. Ultimately, this is a private property, and I think over the last 10 years, private property owners have had a habit of reminding the Planning Commission of that fact. So they will again.
Wondering how that was working.
Thanks for your input, but.
But I mean, it is really a medical community.
Yeah, well, and that's the issue for
All
us.
the
I think
other
it's not
doctors and
only
all the private
correct,
yeah,
and
I mean,
so I think and again, planning is and I think it's always. The hard part is you really want to do planning before it's an emergency, but then everyone's asking, what are you rushing this for? Because if and when the hospital moves, that's going to be the first step. But doctors who are now on Old Town or Meeting House, you have to anticipate over time they're going to want to be located where the hospital is also. And so when we say 20 acres, and that's not just the land the hospital owns, that's really all the other properties along Old Town Road, for example, that are tied to the hospital.
Right.
And so that's going to move at some point. And so we really want to look at that as a whole. And as James said before, and Mark, I think there'll obviously be a diversity of uses here because property, for example, on Herrick Road is going to be very different than the core hospital complex that we know.
It's going to be a major impact. Any other questions?
No, I guess we'll learn as we go.
That's always
Well, I want to send a sincere thank you to
Yes, thank you.
the Planning Commission for all of their efforts, and you guys have done
a lot of work.
an incredible job, and I want to thank you guys. Also, a sincere thank you to you, and hopefully we can partner and take a look and come up with a reasonable design for them and economic replacement for the hospital, because it's key to the village of Southampton. It's key to all the retail stores that often get the nurses and so forth as they come and go through the hospital. So the impact is, to me, is really huge. Because it's not only affecting the real estate properties, but it's affecting the business district.
And it's an underpinning for our bond rating.
Yes. Yep.
Which is really important.
Yep. So we appreciate all your efforts, and hopefully we can continue with this and come up with some good ideas.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay.
James, thank you very much.
Can you come to the podium, please?
State your name.
Hi, I'm Susan Burke. I live on Herrick Road. With good talk. Thank you, James. My question is, on your first page of your presentation, you showed a schematic of the hospital with a very relatively large dotted circle around it, and I wondered what you envisioned as the purpose of showing that dotted circle is.
Yep, please come up.
No need to read anything into it. I think it was just, I think we were trying to fit the
We live in the middle of it.
We were trying to fit the text into a circle, so I think it got bigger than it needed to get.
Okay, that's what are you saying?
The study area would be much closer in around the hospital itself. So that was
So
not,
that's
that was
just
not
sort
meant
of
to be.
graphics. Thank you.
False alarm.
You mind if I ask you one more question, Paul?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, outside of the analytics and the choice, well done. One thing that wasn't mentioned, so I'm going to ask cost, price, fee for the...
That's the next step.
Okay.
That's the next step.
So that hasn't been outlined yet, so the first part was to...
Yeah, that's the process we've been going through over the last few years.
I guess it's very magnanimous of this crew to be here.
Right, they're just going to contribute
Just
their
wondering,
time.
you know, that was not mentioned in any of this. Beautiful presentation.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sincerely, thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I think there's ranges that we know it's not going to be under
Next, we have a communications to the board.
What about the public hearing?
We have public hearing.
Oh, public hearing, excuse me. Public hearing is next, so I'll make a motion to open the proposed local law to clarify the height of residence where a portion of the roof is flat.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Maybe, Council, you can give us a little update on this one.
Well, you originally opened a public hearing on this on March 26th. You held it open a couple times. One of the things early on in the drafting of this is we looked at recommendations came out of the report that was part of the Planning Commission's input, review of as-built conditions. Glynis prepared that report. And there was a recommendation in there, it was one line, and it suggested that the board consider, in connection with a whole host of amendments, some of which you implemented and some you didn't, and there was recommendations with respect to height that you amended the code in 2015, which is what we're looking at, and it states that where a structure within certain lot sizes. So I'll just take, for example, the smaller lot sizes versus or the larger lot size. So, for example, your height in a lot greater than 40,000 is entitled to be 35 feet in height. However, because the village did not want to encourage and actually discourage flat roofs house going all the way up to 35 feet, the board provided that any structure where the pitch of the roof was less than 7 on 12 would be the height would have to be reduced by 7 feet. In other words, to 28 feet. The issue, you can understand if the entire roof was 7 on 12 or it was entirely pitched, but there was this gap in between where there's been some interpretations that the building department has been applying where, we'll call it for lack of a better word, where you have roofs that there's some portion, but not the entire portion of the roof, is flat, but other portions are pitched. And many of these have been through review and approved by the Architectural Review Board. The question, some community members question a couple of these applications, in particular this section, and the board undertook to try to address this issue and try to deal with the so-called in-between situation and how much flat roof can be part of the structure. But just looking strictly at the recommendations from that report, it said that the height should be, the strategy was to consider or limit flat roofs above 27 feet to 5% of the roof area, quote unquote, so to speak. And since part of the public hearings, we've got a lot of input. One of the things I sent the building inspector back was to see if he could talk to Glynis specifically about that recommendation and what does that mean, because it can be interpreted in two different ways. And first, why 27 feet? Because if you're at the 35 feet and you reduce it by 7, you're at 28 feet. So I don't know if that was a recommendation before we implemented what we did. And so, but the question is it 5% above 27 feet? Or is it the entire roof? Or so the building inspector is still working on, and Glynis apparently is a family member has had some medical issues, so they've been dealing with that, and they haven't been really able to connect and deal with this in the last couple of weeks. So there's still information, and the point being is that we want to get this correct, apples to apples, as to exactly, because there's other issues, limiting the 5%, and future enforcement of that, and how it deals with existing structures, and how you might be making everything non-conforming or otherwise, and how to deal with that. That was just something raised by the building inspector a couple days ago with me. It's like, okay, what do we do if you adopt this, and how do we apply this to existing structures, and how to conform, and so on. But part of it had to do with the energy rating and the ability, and we got some input on that. The building inspector is saying in a lot of instances, some flat roof portions of the building are used for solar panels, and how that's been implemented, and he got some data that relates to that, and how that relates to the percentage of roof area. In some cases, it's more than, in a lot of the cases he found was much more than 5% of the total roof area. So what I'm telling you tonight is there's still a little homework we need to do on this. My suggestion would be to hear any further comments and keep this open for further discussion until we get some more information, particularly from Glynis on this.
Thank you. Is any comment from the public? Or?
Yeah, the Planning Commission was there for the last 2 years when Glenn was doing the report. Eldon Scott from the Planning Commission. And it is an important issue, because what happens in the geometry is if you have a pitched roof like this, and you basically set the geometry as to the width of the footprint of that house, and as you put something flat across the top, you sort of widen that massing. So it does have in addition to the fact that you see a flat portion, it also has some impact on the whole massing of the house. So it's important. I think that it was never the intention that this isn't an additional restriction. It was always, the code always said that there was a pitched roof, and then the lower flat portion was if you wanted to build a modern house. Usually, on the beach or something, you have a lower flat roof. So it was never the intention that people would put large flat roofs in that pitch section in this village, or really any of the other villages or towns in the area. So I think we're now just grappling with some of the technicalities around what does that mean, and if you have, I think the intention of the 5%, because I remember those discussions, was if someone had to resolve a roof problem where you have different pitches coming together, or you have a chimney or a mechanical situation, the idea was to allow some opportunity for people to resolve those problems, but not to use it as an opening to create an architectural flat roof. It was more to resolve a condition. So that's what my recollection from the meetings.
So when you have the pitched roof that you were talking about, and then they moved it out like this, and then they created a flat area, and was that to do solar there, or so that you wouldn't see it?
I mean, I think usually it's to fit your house into the envelope. It helps you, because basically if you could go to 50 feet tall, you can have this, but if you now have to be at 34, whatever the feet is, you have to either shrink the house or go flat.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Absolutely.
So it becomes a geometry thing. That doesn't mean you can't build a large house. What it makes the architect do is maybe turn the gable and have another wing going this way. So you tend to get larger, fatter houses with that flatter portion. But it's also it's just a common practice if you look at other codes, on the East End. that's pretty common practice, is to have a pitched roof or a flat roof for a modern house. So that's what I remember.
Any other comments? So in consideration of what council said, I would make a motion to adjourn proposal local law for all intents and purposes to the...
To May 21st or June 13th?
We'll try for May 21st, and then if we can get it resolved, hopefully. If you're okay with 2 weeks away.
Okay. To clarify the height of residence where a portion of the roof is flat.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Now, communications to the board.
Received a letter to please read into the record. Dear Mr. Craddock, Village Trustees, I inquired about the bidding for the annual surf school concession for the Village of Southampton, only to learn that the highest bid for the 2019 season is $2,500. This low amount does not warrant the increased use of the chosen beach for the surf school, nor does it warrant the expense of enforcement. As a local resident, I was unhappy with the surf school's use of my closest beach last year. The increased traffic, lack of parking, clutter from equipment, and general noise and traffic changed the beach from one that I loved to one that was never peaceful and always crowded. The lack of enforcement also prescribed number of students and the days and times of the day when the school was to be allowed to be in session made Little Plains Beach all day, every day into a noisy, busy place. I do not think $2,500 for the season warrants that any surf school should be working at our village beaches. I urge you, given the poor financial gain you would receive, to simply put the surf school to rest. Our village does not need a surf school. Please decline all bids. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Susan Stevenson, village resident.
Okay. And we have suggested resolutions.
Entertain a motion resolved that the reading of the minutes for the work session and board meeting of April 23rd, 2019, and the special board meeting of May 2, 2019 be dispensed with, and that those minutes be accepted as filed by the village administrator, and that the actions taken at that meeting be and hereby are ratified and approved.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolved that the claims for the warrants dated May 9th, 2019, totaling $440,516.22, warrant number 16 of the general fund, and $447,760.16, warrant number 13, capital reserve fund, and the village payrolls for the periods ended April 25 and May 9, 2019 be audited and approved.
I make the motion.
Second.
General fund disbursements over $1,000. Aboff's paints, wall coverings, $1,961.14. That was paint for stock. Alliance System Integrators, $2,520. That's service calls for the police department and fire department. Alpine Software Corp., $2,881.17. That's maintenance, software maintenance for the ambulance. Braun Marketing, $4,815.78. That's the design, printing, and mailing of the spring newsletter. Cast Productions, $3,235. That's the videographer services. CSCA Employee Benefit, $29,812.70. That's the dental and vision policies. Dead On Design, $3,125. That's marketing branding for the Southampton Village. Eastern Epoxy Seamless Floors, $1,850. That's the floor at the Cooper's Beach concession. Antoinette Edwards, $1,160. Minutes for appointed boards. Federal Eastern International, $4,220. Bulletproof vests for the police department. Firematic Supply Company, $1,031.36. That's repair for the fire rescue truck. First Contact 911 LLC, $3,069. That's tactical dispatcher class for members of our public safety dispatchers. First Presbyterian Church, $3,000. That's parking lease. Fowler's Garden Center, $4,799.73. That's for sweet peat mulch, grass seed, and flowers. James Frankenbach Sr., $1,000 medical reimbursement. Galls LLC, $1,432.38. That's belts and tactical force pants for the police department. Kelly Gang, $1,000 medical reimbursement. Heart of the Hamptons, $6,500. That's CDBG pass-through funds that will be reimbursed by the Suffolk County. High Tech Fire and Safety, $7,084.23. That's NFPA certified parka rain pants for the ambulance corps. Integrated Wireless Technology, $1,695. That's installation and service for radios in the ambulances. Island Tech Services, $1,953. That's two computer workstations for the fire department. Johnson Electrical Construction Corp., $1,420. That's traffic signal maintenance for the month of April. Jones and Bartlett Learning, LLC, $1,150.51. CPR training supplies for the ambulance. Donald King, $1,000 medical reimbursement. Malvisi Equipment, $1,718.41. Parts for the top dresser. McKesson Medical Surgical, $1,008.29. Medical supplies and equipment for the ambulance corps. Memphis Equipment Company, $2,501.37. Repair parts for the fire department brush truck. Morgan Auto Supply, $3,914.13. Various auto supplies for village fleet. Motorola Solutions, Inc., $2,087.10. That's radio repairs for the ambulance corps. National Grid, $3,639.37. Utilities for multiple locations. Nelson Pope & Voorhees, LLC, $10,071.69. That's consulting for the village board and the village appointed boards. Norsec & Son, $4,562. That's monthly refuse. Nugent & Potter, $1,344.95. Plumbing supplies for various locations. New York State Municipal Workers' Comp Alliance, $216,878. That's the third quarter premium. Office of the State Comptroller, $9,444.55. It's the state's portion of Justice Court fines. Optimum, $1,669.51. Internet cable fees for various locations. Pitney Bowes, $1,520.99. That's postage. PSEG, Long Island Collection Services, $18,391.16. Utilities for various locations. Quill Corporation, $3,388.14. That's for two multi-function printers and copiers and desk chairs for the offices at the ambulance corps and various office supplies. Riverhead Building Supply, $2,619.95. Supplies and materials for the building's maintenance department. David Schmidt, $1,049.27. That's travel reimbursement for training. Southampton Daycare Center, $6,500. That's CDBG pass-through monies to be reimbursed by the county. Student Growth Consultant, Inc., $1,275. Historic and architectural consulting for the...
Skip Sprague.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. For the Architectural Review Board. Sprague Operating is $5,987.40. That's for fuel for our fleet. Town of Brookhaven, $3,930.84. That's sweepings disposal. Town of Southampton, $1,049.30. That's leaf and brush disposal. Vehicle Tracking Solutions, $1,271.47. GPS data charges for the month of April. Velve Top Products, $2,655. That's reflective paint for the highway department. Yes.
The GPS tracking is for which department?
All departments that have GPS.
Thank you.
Verizon Wireless, $2,296.48. Mobile phone services for multiple departments. W&G Services, $9,514.16. Refurbish a boiler for the fire department and boiler service for the police department. The fire department was Hampton Road and police department, police headquarters. WB Mason, $1,339.80. Paper, office supplies for multiple departments. Whitmer Associates, Inc., $2,951. Safety equipment and supplies for multiple trucks in the fire department. Capital disbursements. Morton Builders, Inc., $429,260.16. That's the general contracting for the ambulance building. SCC Construction Management Group, $18,500. That's the construction management bill for the month of April. All in favor? Entertain a resolution resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the attached schedule of budget transfers to eliminate line item overages for the period ending May 9th, 2019.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Budget transfers for period ending May 9th. $4,000 out of the contingency account moved to a 1980.4 MTA tax, $4,000. $500 moved out of central garage contractual expenses, $500 into central garage clothing. $500 moved out of building inspections contractual expenses, moved into building inspections, supplies, and materials. $300 moved from grant writer into $300 into the mayor's contractual expenses. $2,200 taken out of buildings maintenance clothings, $300 moved into heliport utilities, $1,000 moved into buildings maintenance utilities, $500 moved into buildings maintenance telephone, and $400 moved into buildings maintenance fuel, oil, and gas. There's no questions. All in favor?
Aye.